a few tantalizing problems, some of which some of you are engaged in. I spoke this morning with the Lingua Franca team. What a cute name it is. And you're in this space somewhere. You could be in this space. You could be, look at, this is 5 years ago. We did the city of Stockholm with 5 years ago less technology. And yet, what did we deliver for the city of Stockholm? We're the integrator. We're the system integrator. We don't make components. It's not the piece parts. That's not what we're selling. We're selling them a contract to avoid building a bridge. You know the city of Stockholm? It's a city center that's an island. Bridges in, bridges out. Too many people going, too much congestion. The mayor, a woman, just gets elected, conservative, and immediately runs into trouble with her political allies. And the Green Party is the only savior for her and for her administration. The Green Party comes to her and says, here's the deal. No more bridges. No more cars. Reduce the carbon footprint. We want a commitment that you're going to make things better for the environment here in the city of Stockholm, Madam Mayor. All her vice mayors say, you're crazy. Don't do it. We may get bumped out of power, in 6 months. This thing will not only take us out of power in 6 weeks, it'll ruin our careers for life. It's a disaster. Don't do it, Madam Mayor. She decides to do it. She makes the deal. She takes her biggest critic of that wonderful advisory staff telling her not to do it, and she makes him the project manager for this program. And IBM makes this guy a rock star. Gunnar Soderholm travels the world over now talking about the brilliant Stockholm transportation plan, traffic plan, and this is the way he would tell the story too, so I'm not telling it at school. He would be saying exactly what I said to you, because I've heard him, and he explains to you why. 40% reduction here, 25% reduction here. I mean, they got more than what they were looking for. I think the whole contract was $100 million over 4 years, or something like that, versus a bridge that would have cost them $1 billion. And a bigger carbon footprint, and more cars, and just a bigger mess. They had to, quote unquote, kick the can down the road for a lot more money. So where's the innovation there? How's that work? Is it in all the 45 partners? Is it in the sensor? Is it in the gantry to read? It's not any of those things. No, it's the way you bring it all together. It's the value proposition that says the problem was what? The problem was what? Actually, the real problem was my political career. I got to stay in power. You have to be successful. The only way I can stay in power is for you to commit to these things. Lower the carbon footprint, drive more people to public traffic, and give me a system that's fair, that I can find the violators. By the way, along the way, parenthetically, for the first year or so, the city coffers filled up with money because people just didn't pay attention to the fact that they were automatically having their bank accounts dinned by this system. Every time you went to the city center, it cost you 50 bucks. If you went in between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning, 50 bucks immediately out of your bank account. And in some cases, by the way, they actually gave you an incentive to take the sensor. He said, okay, Kevin says, I'm a cheater, I'm going to be there anyway, so give me that sensor, and it only cost me 25 bucks. And people took it. People took the sensor and only paid half the fine. So after a while, they said, enough of this. My bank account's depleting. I don't know what. I'm not focused on this. And what did they tell me? Like in 2 bank cycles, people started to pay more attention to it. But their coffers were filling up with money along the way for people who weren't paying attention to this intelligent traffic management system. Water. I spoke a little bit about water. Got more than this. Lots of water is very important. The Hudson River project. I don't know if you're familiar with the Hudson River, that 90 mile or so river body that goes from Albany down to New York City. I used to live right on the Hudson. Was born and raised on the Hudson River. It's been the most abused, the most polluted, the most cleaned up, the most confused river, perhaps, in the country. So somebody got the bright idea, the Beacon Institute for Water got the bright idea to instrument, highly instrument, maybe 10,000 sensors from Tidewater down to New York City, so they can figure out on the moment what's going on in the Hudson River. On the moment, you're polluting. Not, we're going to do a time slide and figure out that you polluted 6 months ago and have a big argument with you. It wasn't you didn't flush the bowl. It wasn't your fault, it was somebody else's fault. Somebody else was flushing the bowl in Kingston, I was flushing the bowl in Poughkeepsie, and how do you know it was me? No more of that. We're going to know exactly who you are when you're doing it. We're going to be able to predict the conditions, high, low, medium range, and the Hudson's a deep river. We know when the shad's running. Shad run in the Hudson River, and you can eat them now. They only have one head. And we'll tell the Nanskamer power plant to shut down. No discharge. When the shad's running this way, you can do that a week ahead of time. This way, the shad can surely, lay their eggs, and you get the picture. The power of this example is this is all about data at the moment, acting at the moment. This idea for you to think about everybody saving data, it's a bad idea. I'm telling you right now, people should be executing on the data when they collect it. They should be making decisions then and there. So it's driving storage companies, profitable beyond their wildest dream as storage expenses, continue to rise, as everybody has to save everything. They shouldn't be. They should be making decisions right then and there. This would help do that. This would help take all these massive inputs, 10,000 sensors every nanosecond of every day, and decide what's important and what's not important, and make operating decisions right then and there. By the way, our U.S. intelligence agency wants to do things like this as well. Why wouldn't they? Malta, I won't bore you with Malta. Everybody's got a smart grid story. Smart grids are just so important going forward. My biggest worry in this country is not only do we have an unsmart grid, I think we have a prehistoric grid. I mean, our grid is kind of based off of the early 1900s, when electricity was first invented and things started to be what? We haven't changed it. That grid continues to propagate. It's one of these patchwork quilt things that you wonder, why isn't there more brownouts? Why isn't there another blackout in the Northeast? I mean, how the hell does it work anyway? Does anybody know how it works? The reason it works is because people at the local level manage to cobble it together. If you ever want to study something to frustrate you as an engineer, study the grid. Study the American grid system. It would scare you. It would make you want to build your own electrical generation capability, locally, right where you're going to consume it. I'm not doing it justice, and I don't mean to slam these people. They work very hard at it. But policy issues, there's just so much going on. We don't have the commitment of a country like the country of Malta, where the president of Malta says, hey, we're wiring everything. We're going to wire gas, we're going to wire electricity, we're going to wire water. Everything's going to be smart. So we're going to feed you data so that you know what you're consuming, and we think an informed consumer is an intelligent consumer, and you'll do the right thing. But more importantly, we're not going to let him continue to steal from us because we're going to catch him. Now we know exactly what he's doing, and he won't ever be able to do that again. So that's the power. Now, is there innovation in this? Well, it's cute. I mean, yes, there's got to be some system-level thinking that goes around this. All the capabilities, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. You can go down to Radio Shack and buy most of the stuff that you're going to have to use to make a smart grid consumer system. You may have to go to somebody else to get the stuff that you're going to make to power the grid, to be able to put intelligence on the grid, to run down those same power lines, IP capability. But that's doable, by the way. There are people that have IP capability that run down power lines. So you can get both communications as well as electricity in the same conductor. So we need more of that kind of thinking going on in the final analysis. And by the way, that'll also deal with the issue of the environment and the carbon footprint, because you won't be wasting a lot of energy. So, as always, it comes down to, are we prepared? Do we have the skills and the talents to pull this off. These are trivial ideas. I mean, we could have a brainstorming session and come up with 3 better ideas about what smarter systems need to be built. Maybe we could do that here. It's not clear to me we could do that in a lot of other colleges and universities. Because most of the engineering and technical population, most of the STEM population, science, technology, engineering, and math, not just in this country, but the world, are prepared for careers using, at best, an 18th century model. It's the I-shaped model. Deep and narrow. It's the I-shaped model. Me, electrical engineer, not just an electrical engineer, I'm a circuit designer. Circuit designer, electrical engineer. I mean, I used to go home on spring break or for vacation, and my mother would say, Nikki, she's the only one who called me Nikki. The phonograph is broken. Could you fix it? The lamp needs to be rewired. I said, Ma, I'm an electrical engineer. I'm not an electrician. I don't know how the phonograph works. You want me to wire the lamp? That lamp may never be the same again, by the time I'm done with it. And she actually, to her credit, God bless her, she saved a pile of crap that I worked on and it never worked. She shows it to me every time I go visit. She says, hey, you did that. My college education cost, that's what I got for it. That's not what we need more of going forward. But that's the model that we propagate. You don't do that here. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm grateful. But I want you to think about the fact that the preponderance of other people in the world do continue to propagate a skill model, an education model that simply propagates itself. Now, the only thing we can hope is that the people who are prepared that way are also prepared to do lifelong learning so that they can change themselves into a model that's going to be more acceptable for what's going to happen in the future. And what about the future? Where is it? Look, here's where my presentation, if I haven't insulted you yet, here's where I probably will. And I apologize for that. These aren't my numbers. These are OECD numbers. These are the numbers that say, where's the real opportunity in the world? Now, we can do this based on GDP. In this case, I think we do it based on labor, percent labor. You get the picture, don't you? Remember I told you value migrates? Remember I told you it's all about change? Think about the United States. Think about the United States 200 years ago. 95%, 99% of the labor population are farmers. Farmers. What was it last year? Can you read the chart? 1%. 1% of the people in the United States are in agriculture. What? Is food less important to us? Hardly. I mean, half the reason some of you are here is because we gave you snacks at the door. How we get people to hear these lectures, by the way. You give them something to drink and you give them something to eat. No, food is more important. But think about it. Think about what I said, right? We're a planet. We're a planet of what? 4 or 5 billion people on our way to a planet of 6 or 7 billion people? How do you feed them? How do you get food to all of these people? You end up, it's a forced fit. You end up doing it by becoming more productive. Productivity. Productivity is the word. You have no choice. So if you have more people that you have to send it to, then fewer people are going to be sending it to them, and those fewer people are going to have to be more productive. Because you're going to have to make it cheaper and better. And better. All at the same time. Does that make sense to you? Does that model make sense to you? It's actually probably tried and true. That's probably the way the world goes. It doesn't say you shouldn't be a farmer if you want to be a farmer. I mean, be a farmer. That's okay with me. We need a few. We don't. Are we going to take the next 2 or 3 billion people and say you're a farmer? I don't think so. Not and expect them to not live at the base of the pyramid. That's a warped sense of value for the globe. And it's not what we do here. Now, look at the industrial sector. Many of you have been eyeing that. What's going to happen in the industrial sector? Don't you think what's going to happen to the industrial sector is what's happened to the agricultural sector? Wouldn't that be a reasonable hypothesis? We got 2, 3, 4 billion more people that need to be housed, clothed, moved. How are we going to get all that stuff to them? How do you get it to them? Are you going to make it more expensive? You have to make it cheaper. Higher quality, cheaper. That's the problem. That's the problem. The industrial sector is likely to go the way of the agricultural sector. Fewer and fewer people. We're going to need fewer. It's got to be more productive. Got to be. Remember earlier I said it's a component? You want to be in the component business? Or do you want to be in the systems business? Where do you think the value is in the final analysis? Now, I'm not saying don't go into the industrial sector. Don't leave here saying, that guy, what he told me, and I'm depressed now, and why am I here, and what am I going to do, and I was going to... I'm not saying that. I am saying be aware of the fact that the value is continuing to shift. It's continuing to move away. Where's it going? Like it or not, it's going into the services sector. Now this is tricky. This does not mean that you don't need agriculture, that you don't need industrial things. It's just that their value may show up in the services sector. See, that may be where the innovation is. So, I want you to sign this contract right now. Sign this contract right now. I will dress you for the next 5 years, and every season I'll bring you a new wardrobe. And if you actually sign this very minute, I will actually refresh that wardrobe once in that 5-year period of time. Sign right here. What is that? Is that a service? Sounds like a service, right? I'm selling you a service. I'm going to dress you. I'm going to take stuff from the industrial sector, and I'm going to repurpose it and find value for it in the service sector. Far-fetched? It's happening already. It's happening at the high end. Something a little more straightforward. Sign this contract right now, you'll never have to cook again a day in your life. Sign this contract right now, I'll figure out exactly what your chemistry is, and I'll only give you things that are going to make you healthy. And you'll lose weight, and you'll feel better all at the same time. And by the way, you don't need your kitchen, you don't need to buy pots and pans, you don't need any of that stuff. And I'll find you wherever you are in the world. Sounds stupid? You can get any one of those programs, you know, anybody will let you sign that service contract. People are doing that left and right today. They took stuff from the agricultural sector, repurposed it into the service sector as a new business, as a different business. Food's important. You pay them a lot of freaking money, you know, for 2 pieces of cardboard, you know, with gravy on it. I mean, you know, that's what it's all about, because you'll want the convenience of it. And besides, it's making you healthier, and you're going to live longer, and everybody wants to live longer. That's the way you got to be thinking. That's the way innovative people think. You don't look at these things as woe is me. You look at these things as oh is me. There's an opportunity. Let's do something about that. And along the way, that opportunity can be business, I'll remind you, it can be societal, it can be educational, it could be governmental. This stuff is not immune to any one sector. Another way of looking at exactly what I said. This is by a gentleman by the name of Uday Karmakar from California. It's a more graphic chart, and it's more pointed. Now it is domestic product. This happens to be from 2006. The purpose is simple, right? Physical things, non-physical things. Material things, non-material things. This is information, this is material, these are products, these are not. What's happening? The arrows indicate what's happening. I mean, already today, the economy of the United States is 50% services. And on top of that, the boxes at the top are being scrunched out, and this box is being pinched out. So, would you like to go work here? Do we want to send you to work in that box? You could. I mean, there's always going to be one person standing. I mean, so it could be you. You say, yeah, it'll be me. I'll be the one person left, you know, in that segment of the economy. It could be your goal. It's a very noble thing. Laws of probability, statistics, you're familiar with that, you know. Why do you want to be there? These things will be repurposed over here. These things will be repurposed over here. In the end, it is information. And in the end, it probably is services in some way, shape, or manner. That's where the opportunity for growth is. Bless you. I like to say, I'm an electrical engineer, I said that to you already. I mean, I like to say, we won. Everything's going to be electrified anyway. It's everything. I mean, I'm on Delphi's board. I mean, I look at the car. I look at the content in the car. It's an electrical engineer's dream. I look at the challenges that we face on carbon footprint and the quest that the president has put out to ask us to reduce our carbon footprint by 83% from 2005 baseline to 2050. You're not going to do it without electric cars. So we're going to need some mechanical engineers because the wheels still go round. That's true. But other than that, T-shaped people are what we need, not I-shaped people. T-shaped. That's what you are. You graduate here, not only, you know, in some sense a minority because there's so few of you from Olin, but you graduate here because you're a minority of the education shape that you end up taking when you leave here. There's very few T-shaped people in the world. There's some people who became T-shaped. They made themselves T-shaped. I think Steve Jobs is a wonderful example of a T-shaped innovator. Just a marvelous thinker, a very broad thinker. You know, not capable of doing anything, and I'm not slamming him. He's a very good friend, and I'm very worried about him. But it never stopped him. It never stopped him from understanding what was right. It never stopped him from understanding the problem in the broadest context. Never stopped him from, so he's a T-shaped person of the other kind. He started out here and came back here. And by the way, we need them made both ways. You know, we need them from here to go this way, and we need them from here to go this way. So this doesn't just mean, you know, more Olins. It means other people have to, other liberal arts schools have to start to change the way they teach and the way they help educate their students as well. This is powerful. The country that gets this right first, companies that get this right first, or the colleges that get this right first, they're the winners. They're the absolute winners. I think I was telling Rick earlier when we were meeting, the only good news in this country, the only slightly good news, is that everyone who's chasing after us happens to be using the 19th century mind to chase after us. Most of their people are educated in a solid eye. Very, very, very narrow, very, very deep. But you know, I've given this lecture in China many times. I've given this lecture in Japan, in Korea, and in India. They get it. They understand. They're trying to change. What you've got to decide is whether or not they've got the cultural capability to change. Because somewhere along the line, this change comes down to a cultural change. That's the change that's going to matter in the end. There's lots of opportunity out there, my friends. Don't ever despair. I told you about social networking, this whole idea around modeling and simulation and the value of analytics and to really generate intelligence. This whole thing around, did you watch Jeopardy? Some of you must have watched Jeopardy on Valentine's Day. The Watson, Jeopardy challenge. It's just the beginning of what can happen. There's nothing magical about Watson. I mean, it's people. It's the wonderfully gifted, 24 people who wrote those algorithms, who shared that vision, who understood that problem better than anybody. The problem of being generally knowledgeable. I mean, you realize Jeopardy never asks the same question twice in its entire history. So it's not just a matter of reading all of the previous Jeopardy files into the computer. They did that. but they needed to start to think. They needed to start to be able to process data. That's the analytics of the whole thing. We're just scraping the barrel. Look, I lived through, you see, a series of these in IBM. And yes, Watson was started on my watch, so I'm very proud as the godfather of Watson. I've been the godfather of a lot of things, though, in IBM. I was the godfather of Deep Blue, when we played chess and beat Kasparov. I was the godfather of Blue Gene, when we decided to build a computer that became the fastest supercomputer in the world that we use to manage our nuclear stockpile. So this is just the beginning. We are just so, by the way, none of this thinking, none of this analytics, modeling, it doesn't exist in the utility business. It doesn't exist in the energy business. The only place it exists in the energy business is in making weapons. And we need to do that too for other reasons, and we can debate that if you'd like. But that's why I'm so optimistic. It doesn't exist in the healthcare business. We waste more money in healthcare maintaining records than we do delivering it to patients, for goodness sakes, to deliver care. Is there opportunity? It's huge. It's exciting. Carla knows I used to say this all the time. As I would getting closer and closer to the end of my career with IBM, I would look back and lament and say, I couldn't have been born at a better time. To have been there through that primordial ooze that I showed you on the first chart. It was wonderful. But as I look back, I say, it's unfortunate. Because now the real fun begins. Now you have enough stuff. You have enough mass. You have enough capability to really rock and roll. To really make a difference. To really innovate. To really do something about all these vexing issues that we've talked about for so long. That's the energy you should be thinking about leaving Olin with. It's a great opportunity. You're just going to have to commit yourself to being as broad as you are. And you're going to have to commit yourself to continuing to learn in the final analysis. I'm going to leave you with a different thought. You can read that chart, but I'm going to leave you with this thought, a personal thought. Maybe you've heard this before. I'm a second-generation American. My grandparents were all born in southern Italy. My mother and father were born in the United States. And if you're familiar with that immigration model, my grandparents couldn't speak English. We were all, I have an older brother, 2 younger sisters, we were all programmed to be American first and Italian second. Because my mother and father knew very well that they were going to sacrifice their lives for the children. They were going to do everything they could to get their children to be better than they are. There was no doubt we were all going to be educated. There was no doubt we were all going to college. There was no doubt in my father's mind. Now, my father didn't make $10,000 a year when he finally retired from the state job he had. It was a corrections facility guard. But he worked 3 jobs. He did whatever he needed to do. Whatever he needed to do. And he wasn't the kind of guy, you had a beer with. He wasn't the kind of guy you just sat around and talked with, because he was never there. He was working on a non-stop basis. And he was a pretty tough guy. He was a guard. He gets 100 patients or 100 inmates that he's got to take care of. He has no gun. So he's a pretty tough guy. You get the picture? And he's a really fast-moving, very few-word spoken person. Got that? And he ruled that way in the family as well. He was very fast. Paka paka lagul, we say in town. So he ruled by this hand. On various parts of your body if you weren't behaving. And I was the problem child. I'll be the first one to tell you. If my sisters were here, they'd be ratting me out as they did, every night. So my father and I had an interesting relationship. It got better over time, but a very demanding relationship. He had 3 jobs. I had to have 3 jobs. I won't bore you with all of that. But he would push me unmercifully. If you get an A, Did anybody get an A+? Did anybody do better than you? If you didn't get them all right and got an A, why didn't you get them all right? I mean, that was his first question. And it was constant grinding like this. And I was a pretty good student. I did pretty well, and I kind of went along with all of this for a great period of time. And when I got into high school, he enrolled me, I come from New York, he enrolled me in summer school. And I said, what did you do that for? You know, only the flunkies go to summer school. That's what it's there for. You know, for people who didn't do well. He said, no, you're going to get ahead. So I didn't even start high school. I hadn't even gone to the first day in my freshman class. I had already been enrolled that summer in high school to take a math course by my father. And I took a math course every summer. That was his plan. So constant pushing, constant, you know, don't worry about it, you know, you'll learn something, you'll do better, you know, you need to do better, you need to be different than me, everything has to be different for you, you know, so don't be comfortable. Don't be comfortable. Push. Push. Does that probably doesn't ring a bell or anything to you. Just the way it was. Okay. Finally one day, I think maybe it was in my junior year, maybe that summer between sophomore and junior year, I'd had it. I kind of drew the line and I said, yeah, I got to talk to this guy. He is driving me nuts. Absolutely crazy. And I can't do this anymore. I really can't. You know, I have no life. You know, I'm delivering newspapers after school. You know, I got this 100-paper route. I deliver newspapers 6 days a week. You know, got no social structure. I got no nothing. You know, I'm tired. I'm tired of that. So, Dad, could we have a talk? Could you and I? This is dangerous for my father. I said, could we have a talk? I mean, this guy doesn't talk. You know, fine. He says, what do you want? What do you want? So I said, Dad, I need to hear from you. Why? Why is it that everything in my life has to be so different than everything in your life? Why is it that you push me well beyond anybody else that I know? Why is it that you can't just cut me some slack and, you know, relax a little? Why is it that everything in my life has to be so changed and different, not only from your life, but from everybody else's life? And he looked at me very seriously, and I felt relaxed, to be honest with you, when he did it. And he said, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. Think about that. If you don't like what you've been getting, why do you keep doing what you've been doing? Because all you're going to get is what you've been getting. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Didn't I say in the beginning, I wanted you to be thinking about that word, change, what does it mean to you? I showed you that Kurzweil chart for a reason, not just because I like it. It's all about change. Can you imagine where I would be today if I had stopped with the knowledge that I started with? Can you imagine where I would be on that curve? Now, it turns out, interestingly enough, that people are coming back to vacuum tubes. So, you know, it may have been a long while before anybody would have employed me again, but, you know, they're building amps and preamps with vacuum tubes. No. I mean, isn't it all about change? It's what you've got going for you. It's what you have to harness as you leave here and go out and face the real world. I mean, you see it every day. You see it on the news. I mean, it's all about change. And it's going to continue to change, my friends. It doesn't stop. There's no way to put the genie back in the bottle, nor would you want to in the final analysis. So, that's the innovation that matters in the final analysis. There's plenty of opportunity. Our best days are ahead of us. They are not behind us, but they are different days. They are different days. Just as they were different days for me, they're going to be different days for you. But just as they were wonderful for me, they'll be even